everybody out there in YouTube land and podcast land and whatever land you happen to be in, the land of enchantment, the land of pure imagination,
land of confusion,
either the original or the cover version. This is Wes, and I've got with me Andrew, and we want to welcome you all to Different Strings podcast. This is episode 7, and we are going to be taking on a bunch of guitar myths in this episode. I don't know if we're going to deep dive into them or we're going to rapid fire pop the bubbles that they are, but we're going to be getting to that really soon, whether it's diodes or whatever. I mean, I'm looking forward to the one about diodes because I actually know what a diode is and what it can and can't do. But before we do that, we're going to get into our housekeeping section, which we like to call prep time. And that involves Andrew telling us where you can find Different Strings podcast on the internet.
All right, so check this out.
I'm checking.
All right. There is now a website, differentstringspodcast.com. So loyal listeners, faithful, loyal listeners, if you've been listening, you know that I spend the first 74 minutes of each podcast rattling off our socials, our email, begging you, pleading with you to engage with us. Well, no more. Okay. I'm tired of it. And it's just a waste of my time. So I decided to spend the money on a website just to give all of you basically a central hub, right? A one-stop shop, a single point of contact, a single point of light, if you will, where you can go, you can see our pictures, you can read blog posts, you can check out past episodes, and you can find our socials, and you can send us messages, and you can find our email. It's all in one place.
All in one place.
I put it all in one place. See how I did that?
And we're going to work on some, like Andrew said, we're going to work on some blog posts. We may post some product reviews. We may do a bunch of different things. And so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. I hate to be that guy, right? Because we're actually going to start putting out some videos too that aren't episodes of the podcast. Some of them will be short, some of them will be long, but none of them will feature the two of us just talking to each other like the episodes do. So it'll be a little variety for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, this website, it's our website and we can do what we want.
That's right.
Right. So who knows what'll be up there, but it's free. All right. We will not be collecting your personal data to sell for marketing. So just that won't happen. All right. So speaking of housekeeping, the intro sounded very different this week. I don't know if you were paying attention, Wes. Did you happen to notice? I think someone sabotaged our intro.
We've been hacked.
Oh no! Who hacked us? What happened?
Well, I'll come clean. That is my new single. It's a song called Flightline, and it comes from my instrumental surf rock project, which is called Hypersonic Secret. And that is that's the first single I've ever released. In all of my years of being in a band, I've always been the sideman, the guitar player, and now I'm in charge of a whole band, which at present is just me and a drummer who lives on the other side of the country. But I'm super proud of it, and we'll talk it when we get to the end of the show. We'll talk a little bit more about why I'm doing a surf music project. It'll all become clear when we get to dessert.
Cool. So if you liked what you heard, and of course you did, there will be a link in the description for this video and in the description of the podcast so that you can go ahead to, I believe it's hypersonicsecret.bandcamp.com.
That is correct.
And you can toss down a ducat and you can support local music and listen to some cool surf rock. I mean, just do it. It's $1, right? I mean, just take care of Wes. I mean, it's $1. It's $1 for basically unlimited joy, if you think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're supporting local music, which is fantastic. Maybe not local to you, but local to someone. I mean,
local
you're
to somebody. That's
right, exactly. So, Wes, I think it's a great song. Congratulations on the release of your first ever single. I think you're a fantastic guitar player. Your writing is excellent. You are a tone monster, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the release. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I'm excited about it too. The EP will be out in December of 2023, and it's just been a lot of fun writing these songs and working them out with my drummer friend who is also my producer. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it.
And you're kind of touching on a future episode we're going to do, which I believe you had proposed, is called the democratization of recording.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a good way to put it.
How cool is it that, you can, in today's environment, record all of that stuff at home, have it sound amazing, you mix it yourself, master it yourself. Before mastering, of course, you can get tracks from a guy across the country who also recorded it at home
Yeah.
without spending. I mean, it's an amazing time we're in. I'm really excited. So yeah, I think we'll get to that. But I like that you're kind of like in the midst of it right now, because when we get to the episode, you'll be able to talk about the good stuff, but also the bad stuff, because there are some things about recording at home that just suck.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's jump right into our appetizer. And you came up with the questions this time, so I'm going to ask the question, and you're going to answer first, and then I'll chime in.
All right.
And since we're talking about myths in this episode, so the first question has to do with a common guitar trope that you adhere to, that embodies you. In the dictionary next to guitar trope, it would have your picture.
Right.
So Andrew, hit me. What's your guitar trope?
Embarrassingly, it's that more money than talent joke.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh,
when
no.
we've talked about it in episodes in the past, dentist guitars, Paul Reed Smiths or dentist guitar. Don't get upset. I am one of you. I definitely have more money than talent. Okay. I tell the joke I tell in guitar circles is that, when I stopped practicing and when I stopped learning my instrument, the day I bought a Paul Reed Smith.
There you go.
At that point, I knew that I reached the pinnacle. But
you knew everything you ever needed to know, and you had all the technique you needed.
Yeah. And meanwhile, there's these dudes just absolutely shredding on these $300, Squires. And I'm just like, that is embarrassing. What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
So, but no, that is a trope that I adhere to, that because I see too many examples of it, and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I just think this one's true. Sorry.
Yeah, that's me. I self-identify with that group. Is what Andrew would say.
That's correct. All right. What's yours?
Mine is Boomer Bends, baby. The slower, the better. The longer it takes to get to the full step up, the happier I am.
Oh my God. All right. So my 19-year-old, he was trying out one of my newer guitars, and when he was done, he just started putting it up on the wall, and I'm like, what, you're not going to give it to me? And he's like, no, I've heard enough pentatonic for the day.
Zing.
Oh,
well, now
that I needed some burn cream for that one.
Yeah, that gets you. Remember, thou art mortal, right? So in line with that, so tropes and stereotypes exist for reasons. That doesn't mean it's a good thing to say to somebody.
No.
Or to accuse them of anything. But we all have our important things, and I want to know, when it comes to guitar, what's the hill you are going to die on when it comes to guitar tropes or guitar myths or guitar anything? What's the hill that you will absolutely die atop?
All right. So this one has gotten me in some trouble. I'm not going to say I'm a neat freak, but I'm not going to not say I'm a neat freak. Okay. I'm not going to say that I've spent hours upon hours upon hours properly wiring, neatly wiring pedal boards and cleaning my guitars. And I'm not going to say that I do that, but I'm not going to not say it.
Yeah, you can't say you don't, because I know better.
Yeah. But when a guy shows up we all know that one guy, and he's in every band. None of his gear is maintained. It's filthy. His pedal board is just a bowl of spaghetti with lights shining out of it. His amp looks like it's covered in like 3 layers of dust, and like the tubes are black. And miraculously, this guy, his gear doesn't work. And he's always the one who's
What?
like, yeah, he's like, weirdly, he's always the one that breaks 3 strings at a practice or at a gig. Or like, he turns around and says, "Oh, my cables don't work. I need a cable. Do you have any extra cables?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I have 7 extra. Of course I have cables.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who brings 17 extra cables to the gig because, I'm not saying I have OCD, but I'm not saying I have OCD. So but there's one guy in every band, and I'm just like, dude, clean and maintain your stuff and it will work. And we're working musicians. This was a working bit. People were paying money for us
To
to
see your
play.
band.
I'm
That's
like,
right.
just it's like to me, it's almost like a level of disrespect. Like if you're going to show up, to me, it's unprepared. Clean your gear, change your strings, make sure your tubes aren't black and like broken, and just get your freaking act together. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm triggered right now. Just it's
Deep breaths.
disrespect. All
Deep
right, hold
breaths.
on. I'm fine. Everything's okay. Hold on.
Everything's fine.
I'm gonna
Everything's fine.
I'm gonna do
My,
some mindfulness
mine
exercise. What's
is
yours?
mine is putting the strings on, putting new strings on, and not trimming the ends off at the tuner.
And doing that little windy thing where they like
Oh,
make a
not even
giant
doing
loop.
that. Like Tom Morello does this. He just leaves the strings hanging, dangling out straight through the end.
No,
It
why?
drives me
Oh,
nuts.
it looks cool when Tom Morello does it.
No, no, it doesn't. Tom, stop it. Tom, just stop it. It doesn't look cool.
Could you?
And but I have a reason. Okay, I have a reason, and that's because in my very first band, when I was 15 years old, I played in a band with a guy who never trimmed his strings, and all seven of us. Okay, we had a lead singer, drummer, percussionist, and a full-time keyboard player, plus a sax player. There were 7 of us
At 15?
at 15.
How could you find musicians in your neighborhood at 15? You know how hard it was for me to find? Never mind. God, continue your story.
We lived in the burbs, and we all practiced in the lead guitar player's bedroom, one bedroom with a single bed and a dresser, and all
7
of
of
us,
you.
and 7 of us. And this dude, he was the bass player, and he would never trim his strings. And we're all plugged into 2 outlets with an extension cord running down the hall into the laundry room. And every time he would drag those strings across my bare arm, it would electrocute me. Like I would get a shock. Now it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't health, affecting,
Right.
but it was uncomfortable.
It was like tongue on a 9-volt battery kind of
Yeah,
level.
every single time. And so that continued until one point during a gig, he figured out that the house electricity was a little sketchy, and he kept dragging those strings across my arm
On purpose.
Because
15.
And yeah, I unplugged, I took my guitar and I walked off the stage in the middle of the gig. And I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back until they promised me that they would control him. And at the end of the gig, we loaded out and I quit. And I never played with those people again. I never played with that guy again.
Where is he now?
Trim your strings.
I won't
trim your strings. He is a father of one, and he works in the food industry. I'm not 100% sure what he does.
I love how you actually know this. I was making a joke and you actually know this.
No, he's grown up and responsible and has managed to keep a kid alive for several years. I hadn't talked to him for years and years, decades probably. And one of our mutual friends got married and we were both invited to the wedding. And I'll tell you, he's still a dick. To this day, he really
Shocking.
is. He's no different than he was when we were 15, 16 years old, except he didn't get near me with a guitar.
I've been playing in band.
I feel so much better.
All right, you unleashed. You
yes,
unloaded.
I did. And
this is therapy.
I think now, yeah. I think now it's time we dive into the main course. We're going to bust some myths wide open.
So it's Mythbusters Different Strings Edition.
You got it.
All right.
And
so
we've broken these down into a couple of different categories. So we've got mechanical myths, and that's, mechanical stuff. We've got financial myths, which we'll get to. We've got emotional myths, which are probably the ones that are the most difficult to bust because we tend to get emotionally attached to our ideas. But we're going to start easy. We're going to start with mechanical myths. And here's the first one, Andrew. I'm going to throw it right at you. Let's go back and forth, okay?
Well, and before you even get into it, I know you want to rush right into this because this is probably the most exciting episode
I'm
we've
so
ever done.
excited.
Dude, I want to just ground rule a myth in my opinion, right? A myth in this context is a commonly held belief without any evidence.
Right.
Right. That's, to me, it's like, oh, we just say these things like they're true. We've been hearing them for years.
Yeah.
People have been
Yeah.
saying them for years. We hear someone repeat it and we respect them so that we say it without any evidence to support it.
Or we may not even respect them. We just don't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's somebody said it, it sounds reasonable, and we then repeat it, and it happens enough over and over that it reaches mythological status, and these end up being things that not enough people question.
So if you're a listener or watching or whatever, and you're like, hey, you guys are full of it, that's not a myth, that's reality.
That's
and
fact.
Here's why. Drop it in comments, drop us a line, tell us your story. We want to know.
Yeah.
You know,
we're open-minded.
Yeah, I want to know if you're telling me, look, we're not experts, I said in air quotes, but I think we've been playing long enough to know that none of these are fact. Some of them are up for debate, right? So let's get into it.
Yeah, all right. Our first one. The only way to keep a guitar in tune, especially if you use the trem system, is locking tuners, graphite nuts, lubrication, all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. That's the only way to keep a guitar in tune if you're going to touch that wang bar.
Yeah, that's it. If I walk up to a guitar and I'm like, well, I use the tremolo bar, no locking tuners, pass. What?
So what's the reality behind this? What is a good way to keep a guitar in tune when you want to use the trem?
So if you ask me, and I believe you just did.
I just did.
All right. You tell me if you hear bullshit.
Okay? I will.
I think most of the stuff that is being done these days, like locking tuners and these self-lubricating nuts, I think a lot of these things are done to correct poor maintenance, craftsmanship, and other flaws in the process. Right?
I can't disagree.
Yeah. So it's easier to make a crappy nut out of self-lubricated material than it is to properly cut a nut. All right. Yeah. Cutting a nut requires skill, making the slots wide enough, but not too wide, high enough, but not too high, angled back towards the headstock, rounded slightly so that you're not binding on the string. All of that can be done by a good craftsman. Yep. I have several guitars in here with bone nuts that have no self-lubricating qualities, and those guitars stay in tune. Magic, dare I say, quality craftsmanship. So locking tuners. Yeah, it's easier to make a crappy tuner with a lock mechanism than it is to make a quality tuner that doesn't slip.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, the best thing about locking tuners is how much faster you can change your strings. Yeah, not that they don't let the string loose.
Right. I have guitars, and well, not anymore because they go right in the garbage, or I sell them to the local homeless people, or I give them away to children on Christmas. But if I have a guitar that won't stay in tune, out it goes. And I mean, if I've done everything I can to keep it in tune, okay. So what you do need is you need quality craftsmanship, period. And that doesn't mean expensive. I've had Squires with properly cut nuts. Surprisingly, you can get decently cut nuts these days on inexpensive instruments. You need a decent craftsmanship. You need burr-free saddles, right? You need proper string winding technique. Let's get into that.
We could do a whole episode on that.
All right. So, we've talked about, you don't need 1 or 100 windings on a tuning post. Find a happy medium. It's usually 2 or 3, and do it right. Remember, like a couple episodes ago, there's no right or wrong way. There is a right way to wind strings taught, and several windings, not seven, several, and you got to hold it taut.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't know how to do this properly, there's a million good videos on it. They're all pretty good. You need to wind your strings properly. You need to stretch your strings properly. And we're going to get into stretching strings later, but yes, you do need to stretch them. Don't overstretch them.
Because
If
then
you're
they break.
or they when you overstretch a string, it's basically like you just aged your string to the point where it's no longer really playable, and it will now no longer stay in tune. So when
Right.
you're stretching a string, you're doing two things. Well, maybe more than two things, but you're alleviating whatever slack might be in the tuning peg from your winding technique. And look, even a good winding technique will have a tiny bit of slack. So you're pulling that slack out, and you're also stretching the string. Yes, they're metal. Metal stretches. Get over it. Okay, we'll talk later. Metal stretches. Get over it. Metal, it stretches. Okay, it's malleable. Metal stretches. Get over it. Wes, does metal stretch?
Metal stretches.
All right, you're over it. So all of those things, and properly maintained hardware. So your bridge saddles have to be burr free. What are burrs? If you can run a cotton ball over your bridge saddle and it tears the cotton ball into a million little pieces, you have burrs.
Yeah.
They can be filed away. Now, I wouldn't suggest filing them away unless you know what you're doing. It's time to take it to a good guitar tech. But burrs will happen over time, especially if you're an aggressive player. They're just going to happen.
Yeah.
So those are what you need to keep a good guitar in tech. Yes, even a good guitar will go out of tune sometimes. It happens. Humidity, right? The weather changes, the aligning of the planets, whatever. It will happen from time to time. But by and large, a properly maintained and properly wound set of strings and stretch strings will stay in tune. You do not need all the gadgets. Do the gadgets help? Sure, they help,
Yeah.
and they're great, but they aren't the only thing you need to keep a guitar in tune. All right, myth busted.
Myth busted.
All right,
myth,
my turn.
Your turn. Okay, hit me.
All right, you're gonna love this one because you have some. All right. Wes, did you know that pedal clones don't sound as good as the original vintage units?
You don't say.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think the hard part about this particular myth is the more we pay for something, the better we're inclined to think it sounds.
Oh,
and
confirmation bias.
If somebody has something that they paid a tenth of the price for, and they think it sounds as good as our thing that we paid a lot of money for,
oof, right in the feels.
Yeah, right. Oh man, we don't like that. But you know what? Yeah, I think we've mentioned it a couple of times. I have a clone, right? And now the centaurs go for multiple thousands of dollars. I mean, I see them legit. I've seen them sell for $5,000 and $6,000. I know they sell for more than that sometimes. And I have one that not just looks like the clone, but it has the exact same circuit inside it. Now, the components are different because they're using modern components and not older components from when those were built. But the circuit's the same, the values are the same. It's a transistor-based circuit.
Yeah. There's a whole YouTube channel by JHS Pedals called the JHS Show. He's done countless episodes debunking this vintage circuits sound better. Clones don't sound as good. So I would seek him out. I like his channel. But here's my argument. Okay. We put a man on the moon in 1969. That happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Get over it. I'm pretty sure, right? You hold in your hand and play Angry Birds on a device that uses nanotechnology.
Yeah.
And AI. And I believe I want to say quantum computing to some extent. Quantum physics plays a role in your smartphone.
Some kind of science.
Yeah. Ask Brian May. He knows. That's possible. We can clone a circuit. It's transistors. It's diodes. There's no magic. These things don't get better when they age. It's not wine or cheese. It's transistors. A clone is a clone. That's it. Clones
Yeah.
can sound as good as the vintage units. Myth busted. End of story. I think myth busted, right? You disagree?
I would
Drop it
say,
in the comments, email us, but I hate to break the news to you, but no, Wes spent $150 on a pedal that sounds just as good as a $5,000 Klon. Sorry, get over it.
to me, it really does.
To everyone. Sorry.
All right, let's stay with pedals because here's one. This has got to be my favorite pedal related myth, and that is if a pedal doesn't have true bypass, it sucks.
That's correct. Move on.
Oh, well, we're good with that. We're just gonna keep that. We're not gonna
Oh
laugh.
yeah.
We're
Oh
just
yeah.
not gonna
True
we're not gonna laugh.
bypass. No, I mean true bypass is, well, wait, I don't know what true bypass means, but I hear it's better.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of people don't know what true bypass means, but true bypass pedals have a button on them, right? And that's how you know it's true bypass, right?
I don't know. Okay, so hold on. I Googled it earlier. I think what happens is a true bypass pedal means there's no buffer in the circuit.
That's
So
exactly what it means.
when you turn the pedal off, you are literally it's like there's nothing plugged in.
Yeah, so basically when you have a true bypass pedal, you plug your two cables into it, and when the effect is off, your signal goes from one cable through the switch to the other cable.
Yeah, it completely removes the circuit from your signal path.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Well,
this one, I just laugh at it because if true bypass was obviously the best and bestest way to do it, how do you explain Boss that sells millions of pedals and has sold millions of pedals?
they're all garbage.
Well, just putting a buffer in a circuit doesn't make it suck.
So not only is true bypass not better, but if you load your pedal board with nothing but true bypass pedals, it will actually sound worse.
Yeah, because there's no buffers.
Okay, let's get into this. Again, I'm no expert, but every foot of cable you add to your signal path reduces tone. Okay, it creates drag. It creates resistance, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Every foot of cable. Buffers exist, and sometimes we buy expensive buffers. We buy buffers and we put them in front and we put them in the middle and we put them at the end of our signal chain because we need to restore our pedals with buffers sound fine.
Yeah.
A fully true bypass pedal board will suck tone. Adding a buffered pedal, a buffered bypass pedal or two would actually bring some of your tone back, if not most of it.
Yeah, and
So
the way I like to do it is I'm a big fan of Boss, and I buy a lot of used Boss pedals because they make great stuff, and when you get it used, so there's a little scratch or a chip on it, you get it cheap.
oh
I like
wait,
to
but don't those chips affect the tone of the pedal?
absolutely. I like to start my pedal board with a Boss tuner, and I like to end it with either a Boss delay or a reverb pedal because then I've got a buffer on the way in and I got a buffer on the way out.
And miraculously, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Myth busted, taken down hard. That true bypass, I don't know. It's just, when did that become a thing? I don't even want to get into it. All right, that's another
Well,
episode.
it's a marketing thing to sell pedals. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it is. It's a marketing thing to sell pedals.
It's that simple. It's all
Yeah.
we just want to sell pedals. It's true bypass.
Yeah.
True bypass.
Buy a pedal that you like the way it sounds and use that pedal with no guilt or shame, whether it has true bypass or not. You have our permission.
All right, we are moving away from pedals finally because, geez, there's a lot of myths about pedals.
Yeah,
Here's one.
we could go on and on.
I actually don't think I ever heard this one, but I do know that every once in a while I hear people when they talk about taking. They always tell you when you're changing strings, Don't take all the strings off the guitar at once. It's bad for the neck. It's going to break the neck.
No, that's garbage. That's
What?
not true. That's not true.
It's not? But
No.
Wes, the guitar, it's gentle like a porcelain doll, right?
Well,
You have to baby it.
well, think about how much time that neck spent before it was turned into a guitar with no strings on it.
It was a tree, wasn't it? Before
Yeah,
that?
was that whole time from when it was a tree to when the last, you think they put the strings on it the second they put it together? The strings are the last thing that goes on a guitar.
Typically.
Yeah. So you can take all the strings off your guitar. Now,
Where did this come from?
I think I honestly, here's where I think this comes from, because I started hearing this at the height of the super strat era. And if you have a super strat, that implies a double locking tremolo system.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right. And if you take all of the strings off a double locking guitar at the same time,
without blocking the trem,
and nobody thinks to do that, then it's a pain in the neck to string it back up to tension and get it to back into tune. It is a lot easier on those guitars specifically to change it one string at a time, because then the guitar doesn't go as much out of tune, as much out of whack. But yeah, you can block the bridge, can't keep it from moving. You can do a lot of different things, including just taking all the strings off. Now, what I think is maybe bad for the guitar, quotey fingers, in the long run, is while the guitar is tuned to pitch, you cut all the strings. Bing, bang, boom, bomb.
Even one string, that's bad. That is bad. I learned that a long time ago, not the hard way, by the way. I was told because it's under some serious tension.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension. And now, if you do that, is it going to destroy your guitar neck? Probably not.
It could summon a demon or two.
Yeah, if you always do it down the road, it could cause problems. So I definitely don't recommend cutting the strings off your guitar when they're tuned to pitch.
It's just dangerous. I mean, if there's a lot of tension on those strings. If you cut one, there's a good chance it's flying in your eye. Just don't.
Yeah, you could put your eye out.
All right, Dad, listen. Are you going to turn the car around and take us home?
I might.
Oh my God, you're going to take an eye.
So feel free to take all the strings off of your guitar when you change the strings.
It's the only way you're going to polish the frets and the fretboard. I mean, if you're taking one string off and just doing a little bit of the fretboard at a time, you're wasting.
Yeah, it'll take you a year and a half to change a set of strings.
Don't do that.
At 12 string, forget about it.
Oh Lord.
So let's stay with strings here, because I have a feeling that you have a strong opinion about this next thing, and that is, here's another very popular guitar myth: the heavier your strings, the better your tone. If you put 13s on your guitar,
Stevie Ray Vaughan style,
you are going to sound better than somebody who uses 8s. Myth or fact?
Oh, that is a downright myth.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so
that's a laughable myth. And
laughable.
I got three reasons why.
Go, give me.
Eddie Van Halen, Brian May, Billy Gibbons.
Eddie used 8s, Brian uses 8s, Gibbons uses 7s. Sevens. I don't even think he wants to feel a string under his finger.
Sevens.
I don't know how. So, okay. You may not be a fan of all three of those guitar players at the same, but I am a fan of all of them. Okay. I'm also a fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan, who played very heavy strings.
Heavy strings.
Super heavy. It is not it's Stevie Ray Vaughan didn't sound the way he sounded because he used heavy strings. He sounded like that because it was
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Okay. And I, for years, didn't know Eddie Van Halen used 8s, 8 to 40 or some weird gauge. Yeah. I didn't know. I never knew.
Not a set you can just go by.
No, although you can now, thanks to Ernie Ball. And I am not promoting Ernie Ball, but thank God for Ernie Ball. And he tuned down a half step.
Yeah.
With 8s. I mean, no string tension. So I'm just saying, and he sounded like, come on, really? Are we going there? Now,
I mean,
Do I?
how much money have people spent chasing that early Van Halen era Eddie Van Halen Brown sound,
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah. Millions of dollars on different pedals and gear and variacs. And here's the thing. And Brian May, um, that is Godzilla size tone.
Yeah.
It just, and look, let's be honest, Billy Gibbons also just massive elephantine tone. Like it's not this heaviness of the strings. Do I think because of physics that a heavier string when plucked will vibrate with a wider arc than a lighter string? Yes, physics. Do I think that translates to air quote more tone?
No,
No,
no.
I don't. I really don't think it does. I'm just saying, and I think didn't I don't even want to Rick Beato do some video recently about heavy strings don't equal, I don't know, like something like I didn't see it, but I heard about it. So I think he did one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see it either, and more like I refused to watch it, but we don't need to get into that
Yeah. So
because
so
I can't even anytime somebody if I see I gotta calm down for a second. I'm
all
sorry.
right,
Hold on.
breathe,
Hold on.
box breathing. It's in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4.
All right, good.
All right.
Anytime I see a video with a title that implies that you get better tone by using heavy strings or better tone from using light strings, all I want to do is throw my computer out the window. And I can't bring myself to even click on the link to see what they're saying because it is such garbage.
Yeah. Or horseshit. Here's the thing. You and I both know, where does the tone come from? Wes is
Tones,
wiggling his massive fingers
tones
at
in
the
the fingers,
string.
tones in the hands.
I know people don't like to hear that. It sounds cliche. It's, well, what about all the money I spend on these boutique amps and these custom shop guitars? And surely the more money I spend and the heavier strings I use, and the no, you will sound like you on whatever you play.
Yeah,
Thankfully, I always sound like me. Doesn't matter what I play. And I kind of like that.
yeah.
Um,
And I'll tell you, I do use heavier strings on a few of my guitars,
yeah.
but I do it because I tune those guitars lower than standard for
Uh,
whatever reason.
beg your pardon. Years ago, and I'm going to call you out on this. You did
Okay, call me
something
out.
you sent me a swamp ass,
Swamp.
swamp ash, swamp ass, swamp. Paul Reed Smith is a tongue twister. I will get
It
these
is.
words out. Swamp ash special.
Yeah,
You sent me one for free to try. Do you remember doing that?
I don't, but I do remember my 3 Swamp Ash specials that I owned.
Well, you had one that you sent to me. You don't remember doing that?
No, I don't remember sending it to you. Was it red or white?
White.
Okay.
Okay.
Man, I should never have gotten rid of that guitar.
No, which you can say about pretty much any guitar you've ever owned, because you always. But long story short, that thing, I emailed you or texted you or I don't know, smoke signaled you and said, dude, these strings, what is up with these strings? What do you mean? What gauge are they? 14s? I could not. They were tuned to pitch, to concert pitch, and they were massive. I'm like, do you? I said, I really want to try this guitar out. Can I put normal human strings on it? You're like, go to town. You did
I'm
this. By the way, you did not know me like you know. This is not like going on 20 years. You knew me maybe half as long. You
right.
sent me, or less. You sent me a dude. You sent me a Paul Reed Smith to try. That's
I
dope.
I might
Um,
have that might have been in my phase when I was using 11s.
yeah.
Because I'll tell you why I did it too. I used 11s for a good long time because I was playing for hours every day,
Mhm.
and I have I have I have the way my brain is wired. I need to get a bend as close to perfect as I can. And because I was playing so much, I was overbending all of my notes.
So there was
And
a
so,
method to it here.
yeah, so I went up a gauge to kind of give my hand some extra resistance so that I was able to bend more accurately on stage with all the adrenaline going. Because it was making me crazy that I was bending everything sharp.
That's kind of cool that you had a reason, like, but it wasn't because you needed more tone.
Yeah, and it worked too. It really did. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I remember when I switched, I had to adjust the pickups on all of my guitars because they all sounded weird with the heavier strings on them. So I had to
Right.
lower the pickups on all of my guitars
Yeah, that'll happen.
to get back
So
to what I wanted to hear.
I mean, I think myth busted, myth taken down,
Yeah.
myth. I think we just pile drive that myth. I think the Undertaker just smacked it in the head with a chair. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
done. Gave him the
You
elbow.
use
Okay,
the strings that feel the best to you when you play.
that's it. Done.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
That's it.
So Wes, we're moving on from strings to amps.
Okay.
And I know you're going to love this one. Apparently, there's a myth going around that amps under 50 watts just aren't loud enough for the stage, bro.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had a buzzer, like the Family Feud X
I
buzzer,
know.
because that's
I
the
told you I wanted to make all sorts of crazy stuff
stupidest.
happen, but I just don't have the money for that. So sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't understand this one, Andrew. I don't know where this comes from, because for the last 20 plus years, I've been primarily using amps that are not just under 50 watts, but under 25 watts. The amps that I use right now that I gig with regularly are a Bassman reissue combo, right? That's a 40-watt amp
Okay.
ish, depending on what power tubes you put in it.
Right.
And now I'm using a Falcon Grande, a Tone King Falcon Grande. It's a 20-watt amp.
Okay.
Okay. For a hot minute, I was using a Fender Supersonic 22, which they call it a Supersonic 22 because it is, anyone want to guess? 22 watts. On stage, in my bedroom, in my office that I use where I keep all my stuff, I never turned it up above 3, because at 4, it was uncomfortably loud.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I used it on stage, I was running it at 2 to 2.5, because if you turn up an amp too loud on stage, they can't put you in the mains. And then they're cranking everything else up to compete with the guitar. And the guitar sounds thin and wheedly because it's the only thing not going through the PA.
So I think, I don't know where this comes from either.
I know. I can tell you where it comes from. It comes from amp snobs.
Oh, so there isn't even any like practical anecdotal evidence to this one.
Now, see, a lot of myths like this is my opinion here, folks. A lot of myths like this are rooted in reality, right? So go back to the 60s, go back to the Beatles coming to America for the first time. They didn't have PA systems like we have PA systems. You look at those old pictures of the Beatles playing at a baseball stadium, there's no mics in front of their amp cabs. They went on stage, they turned their amps all the way up, and they played. The only thing going through any kind of PA system was vocals.
Okay.
So how do you fill a room? Right? Dick Dale, the amazing surf guitarist from California, is well known. This is not an apocryphal thing. This is a documented story that he went back and forth with Leo Fender to make amps that were louder and louder and louder, because his band was getting so popular so quickly that they were playing bigger and bigger rooms, and people couldn't hear the guitars over all of the people.
Makes sense.
Right.
When you're not miking anything.
Yeah. And that's why we have such a thing as a Marshall Super Lead 120 watts, a JCM 800 100-watt non-master volume amp, is because once upon a time, guitar players used to play in rooms with no PAs. Now, almost everywhere that bands play has some sort of a PA.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a 50-watt amp anymore. You don't need a 100-watt amp anymore.
You don't need an amp anymore. A lot of
Yeah,
them are walking in. I walk in
ain't
with
that the truth?
with a Kemper digital.
Yeah,
I'm
you
sorry.
don't need an amp anymore.
Um, so yeah, I first of all, I think that's spot on. It's just exactly where it came from. In the days, where nothing was getting mic'd, maybe a 15-watt amp wasn't cutting it. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And even a very loud Vox AC30 wouldn't cut it in some of these enormous rooms.
Is there any AC30 that's not very loud?
No, no, it's stupid how loud they get. But look, today I had an 18-watt Dr. Z Carmen Gia.
Great amp.
Yeah. That I was told repeatedly had to be turned down.
Yeah.
Repeatedly, even when it wasn't that loud, because it just cut so well. They're like, you got to turn that thing down to what?
Down to
I not
what?
only turned it down, I had to turn it around. I had to get a fiberglass shame cone for it to put out in front of it.
The baffle of shame.
Yeah. They're plenty loud, but yeah, I guess, I guess if you're playing, and no one I know is playing these rooms. So people telling me that a Carmen Gia isn't loud enough for stage is ridiculous. We're not playing enormous rooms. And most of the time these days, everything's getting mic'd as it
Yeah.
should be.
And even I mean, when I play gigs like house shows, there's instruments are not going through the PA.
Right.
The
Right.
drums are not going through the PA. The only thing going through the PA are vocals. And I show up with a 20-watt amp, man. And it's plenty. I
Right.
don't even have to turn it all the way up.
Yeah. Yeah. They're fine. Myth is busted, smacked around, beaten over the head with a frying pan. Myth is you're done. You went down.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I'll tell you why I like a smaller amp these days, especially because 20-watt amp doesn't have to have the big giant transformers that a 50 or 100-watt amp has, and that's good for my back.
Yeah. Yeah. These days I like a small amp.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, we gotta get through some of these. We got to get on, because otherwise this is going to end up being a 9-hour episode, which I'm down for. I
Myth,
mean, I'm good,
different
but
strings, Lord of the Rings edition.
that's right. I think one thing we got to touch on, though, we've been talking mostly electric guitars. I think we gotta hit one that encompasses acoustic guitars a little bit, but I think, okay, all right. Here's the thing: there are lots of discussions online and in person that the number one factor in how an electric guitar sounds is the woods that it's made out of.
Hmm.
And I'm here to tell you, Andrew, that's a myth.
Hmm.
Now, does it matter? Probably. Is it the only thing that matters? Absolutely not.
So God, we could spend a lot of time on this, because
We sure could.
I saw this and I thought, okay, healthy debate time. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I do agree with you. A lot of discussion about wood, mahogany body, maple top, right? Flame maple finger, or necks, and quarter sawn this, and ebony this, and Madagascar rosewood, and like the wood. It's like it's like it's wood is sexy,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
curvy. It has the really sexy grains. They like to talk about wood. I'm talking about wood right now. Um, and like most of the Paul Reed Smith tour, they talked about drying the wood and storing the wood and this with the wood and that. Like, it's a thing. So, and we know they sound different, right? I think there's an audible difference, certainly in the feel of an instrument. If you take two of the same instrument, all other parts being equal, a mahogany bodied Paul Reed Smith McCarty 22, say, and then one with a maple top, you should theoretically hear and feel a difference between those two guitars.
Yeah. Yeah. But
How much
I would
different?
also argue that you take two guitars that are made out of exactly the same wood and you're going to feel and hear a difference anyways. You take two Strats that are maple neck, rosewood fingerboard, alder body, and they're going to feel and sound the a little bit different, even with the same electronics in them,
Okay.
even with the same person playing them. I mean, you and I play the same guitar, we're going to sound different.
Oh, yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
or I play two identical guitars and they're going to sound a little different. So I'm not saying that that the wood doesn't matter. But what I'm popping is this belief, this myth that it is the most important thing in an electric guitar. Now,
Okay.
acoustic guitar, 100% the wood, the sides, back, and top, that wood will, you change one of those things and you completely alter the tonal characteristics of that guitar,
Right.
because the sound of that guitar is purely based on air and strings vibrating that wood, and what that wood is matters.
And the bracing techniques, that's
Yeah.
something that a lot of them are messing with these days and trying to improve upon. And so I don't, I think that's an interesting point. I've always believed, and I think we're starting to get more into this now these days, is that guitars are really the sum of the parts. Like
Yeah.
everything that touches the string matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And that's, I'll never forget on this sounds so bougie, Andrew, what I'm about to say to you, but I will never forget something that Paul Reed Smith said to me when I asked him a question about altering the sound characteristics of an electric guitar. And he said, and I quote, "Everything affects everything."
Yep.
That's all there is to it. And you know, I mean, I wrote that down in my little book, the gospel according to Paul Reed Smith, everything
hmm
affects everything, end of book.
hmm
You know, I mean,
I,
that's
someone
it.
else, another luthier, also said everything that touches the string is God.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that because um, if you change bridge material from, like, I don't know, to brass, right?
It
You change your
changes the
saddles
sound.
to changes the tone. If you change the nut material, it changes the tone.
You
If you
change
change,
from nickel to stainless steel frets, it changes your tone.
yeah. So I think that has a lot of, but the wood is the one thing on an electric guitar that doesn't touch the strings for the most part.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
Affects the
mean, right,
resonance of the whole
what,
instrument, maybe, but
right, we give Les Paul, the man Les Paul, a lot of credit for, not for inventing the electric guitar, but for creating the modern electric guitar. And he called his first electric guitar
the
the
log.
Log.
Yep.
It was just a couple of hunks of wood that were used strictly to hold the electronics
hmm
and to give the strings something to pull against.
Yep.
So yeah. So yeah, tone wood, electric guitars. Now we could probably get into it about semi hollows or full hollow electric guitars,
Mm. I
but
think that has bearing on something
I'll
because,
allow it.
yeah, it has bearing, right? Because one of the, I believe one of the big accomplishments with early guitars was electrifying them, created all sorts of, especially on these jazz guitars, the early electric guitars were jazz guitars.
Yeah.
They were basically acoustic guitars that they stuck a pickup on, or like, okay, now it's louder. Well, it was also creating tons of feedback.
Uh-huh.
And so they stuck solid wood through the center of the guitar so that it had like an anchor.
Yeah.
So now they're like, oh, the feedback problem went away. Oh, this actually sounds even better. Like, so it affected the tone.
Uh-huh.
Was it better? Arguably, it was definitely less feedbacky, if that's a word. But I mean, we sit here talking about what's better. Define better. I mean, I don't know. Like, we could get, it's all subjective. I think the wood has an effect. I just don't think it's the only thing that matters. And for sure, I think other things might matter more.
Yeah,
Right?
there you go.
So, all right, myth busted.
Yeah,
We busted
absolutely.
that one. All right, we're
Yeah,
moving on.
absolutely. Let's go back to the stretch and strings thing before we move on to financial myths.
All right, because we did touch on this.
Yeah, we did touch on this, and
Right.
that is strings don't stretch. They're metal. And all you're doing when you tug on the strings is tightening up the slack at the tuning peg.
All right. All right, listen.
I love the disappointment in your voice.
All right.
I'm expressing a common myth. I'm not saying I believe it.
No, you specifically wrote, right, when we prepped for this episode, strings don't stretch because duh, they're metal. And I'm sitting here reading that. All right. Look, I am I know I probably sound condescending. I am not I'm here to teach you, not you, Wes, our listening audience, the ones that, if you believe this, I assure you, metal stretches, the strings stretch. So I want you to think about something. On a guitar with the Floyd Rose, the string is locked into the saddle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is also locked at the nut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Everyone understand the string is locked at two different positions.
It's not going anywhere.
Okay. When you bend it, it raises the pitch.
Yes.
The only way to raise the pitch of a string is to what?
Stretch it.
Where it's locked in two places, the saddle and the nut, or the saddle and the nut, or the, and you bend it. When you bend it,
it stretches.
It stretches.
Yeah. What about if you pull up on the whammy bar instead of pushing down? You pull up, what happens?
The pitch goes up because you're stretching the string.
Yep.
The metal, one of the properties of metal is it's malleable. Have you ever unbended a paper clip?
Yes.
Because it's metal.
Right.
And metal is malleable. Get over it. Everyone, please stop saying when you're bending a string, you're just pulling the slack out of the tuner. That's insanity. That's crazy talk. That is the talk of a person with deep-rooted problems that must be addressed by a science textbook. Metal is malleable. In fact, some are more malleable than others. Gold is extremely, you can pound gold into the thick, like like the tiniest fraction. It starts off thick.
Yeah.
And then you can pound it. And people used to steal gold from gold reserves by chipping it off under their fingernails. It was that malleable. You could actually chip it off under, and metal stretches, it's malleable, strings bend, get over it, myth busted, get over it, move on.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to the financial myths.
So a financial myth is one that has a financial component to the myth. It's not just we have this belief, it's like tied somehow to money or economics, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with probably my favorite one, which is if you want good tone.
Mm-hmm. And I do, Wes. I do.
You do. You have to have an expensive guitar and an expensive amp and maybe some expensive cables and maybe some expensive pedals too. And that's the only way to get good tone.
Well, isn't that true?
No, it's not true at all.
Like, why? How?
Dude, 2 words. Kurt Cobain.
All right. So you thought Kurt Cobain had good tone.
Listen, maybe not all the time.
I think that's a myth. No, I'm just kidding. So,
well, I mean, but you look at the vast number of bands who we look at their first album as the most amazing thing they ever did. do bands, even huge stadium sellout bands, do they have a ton of money to buy awesome gear right at the beginning of their careers when they're recording their first albums?
No,
Absolutely not.
no. And also listening to those bands, you are listening to the production that had a
Yeah.
lot to do with how good that tone was. But aside from that, does anyone remember what Eddie Van Halen used to what he played through on his first couple records?
I always thought it was some kind of Marshall.
Talking about his guitars though.
Oh, yeah, they were parts casters. He put them together himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Didn't pay a lot for them. Nope. And back when he was playing through those old Marshalls, they weren't worth what they are today.
No, no, they weren't.
They weren't.
Well, and you go back, throwback right to Brian May too, right? He's played one
Yeah.
guitar more or less for his entire career. He's so closely associated with the guitar that he and his father built out of scrap.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Scrap. They built that. And I think it's safe to say, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get good tone, right? I think
No, you know what you
money.
need? You need to practice, and you need to discover your tone.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know,
Um, I would say expensive guitars, if you can afford them, can be fun to play
yeah,
and look at and brag about and all that stuff. But um, I, I I don't know. I don't want to say names because I don't want to make it about a particular guitar player, but I don't know. I'm going to say
sure.
a name. I'm going to say a
Say,
name.
give me a name.
Nuno Betancourt.
Okay.
Okay. He's hot right now because Extreme just released a song and
Oh,
everyone's mind is blown over this solo.
which which is mind blowing. I mean, come on.
But it is. However, he's been mind blowing for decades.
Yes, he has.
People are just now discovering this solo and they're like, oh, who is this guy? And I'm like, who is that guy? Go listen to Three Sides to Every Story.
Yeah, go listen to
Um,
anything else he's ever done.
yeah. Um, he did not. He's so good. He's in a little bit of hot water right now because he might have said something that got a little bit of hot water, but he's hot right
Yeah,
now. He's hot right now. Can you be a rock star and that talented and not have a little bit of an ego? I don't know. It
I
must be
don't think so.
difficult. But here's the deal. First couple records, not expensive guitars, not expensive gear.
Nope.
Nope. But monstrous playing and big tone. And weirdly, some of his tone was like he got it in a weird way. Like he's always been a little like I think he used an like a preamp, like a oh my god, an 88 preamp like directly into the front of a Marshall, like
Yeah,
preamp into preamp. Weird. But like that's what I'm saying. Like if you're good, you can make almost anything work.
yeah,
And Nuno, it's to put it mildly, is good and always has been,
yeah.
and he'll make it work. And so I'm just saying, like, I don't know,
Well,
like,
and his signature guitar is I think it's Washburn, right?
yeah,
There's not, there's nothing really special about it.
it's expensive, but there's nothing special other than the
Well,
Bill Lawrence
it's
pickup,
expensive because it's made in the United States, and everything made in the United States is expensive,
and it has his name on it,
and it has his name on it.
and it's got the Stevens extended cutaway, which is extremely rare. Like you don't, it's expensive because his name's on it, but there's nothing special about it. You can build
Yeah,
one
yeah, and
anyway.
it's and when we say it's expensive, it's like normal expensive.
Hmm.
It's not 12 grand for one of these things.
No,
They're like 3 grand, right?
yeah,
I mean, I honestly don't know. I shouldn't have brought it up unless I knew this stuff. Shame on me.
shame on you. Incidentally, and I'm not. No one knows who he is, but I will tell you there is a very talented guitar player in this house who is not me, and he doesn't own a guitar that cost more than $1,000. All of them are under, which I know is still expensive, but I'm talking like next to a Tyler, which is 7,500.
Yeah.
An $800 guitar is downright cheap, and it doesn't play with amps. He uses plugins. These plugins cost $100, and you've heard his stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. None of it sounds terrible.
Monster tone.
Yeah.
He's got good fingers. He's got a great ear. He tunes his guitar. He maintains his guitars. Well, actually, I maintain them for him because, you know,
Right.
dad. But he knows how to mix. He knows how to produce. Like, the kid's got the goods,
Yeah.
and he doesn't like expensive stuff. He just doesn't want expensive. It's just, you don't need expensive stuff to sound good. Myth is absolutely busted. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. He's,
Absolutely.
period. End of story. All right.
Yeah.
Here's one that is, in my opinion, a fairly recent. When I say recent, I mean like the last 20 or 30 years, like maybe
Sure.
20.
I can accept
Here's
that.
one that is no longer true. I think it's a holdover from a time when it was true. And that is, everything made in the USA is awesome, and anything made overseas,
Junk.
yeah, or not even overseas, not in America, like a
Yeah.
made in Mexico Strat, which, by the way, I would take a made in Mexico Strat over a USA Strat any day. They're really good. The road worn ones, holy, like getting a real relic for like $800, dude.
Yeah. I think the made in Mexico fenders are more consistent out of their factory than the made in US ones right now.
Right now.
Now, is that always true? Now, I'll tell you what though, the fenders made in Japan have always had a great reputation. As a matter of fact, the Japanese made Fender guitars are often credited with saving the company in the transition between CBS and employee ownership in the 1980s. If
That's
they had
true.
not been importing guitars from Japan, that company most likely would have died on a quality control cross. I mean, it was just American made Fenders were junk for a good long time there, several
Yeah.
years, and
Yep.
the Japanese made ones saved them. And
Same era, Norland era Gibsons at the same time,
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
struggling. So, I know there's this one might be tied up a little bit of patriotism, a little bit of American pride.
Sure.
Also, at one point, this may have been true when companies first started offshoring production to these companies that were overseas. They were very new at building guitars.
Yeah.
And the companies that were offshoring were new at managing these factories. Okay. So it was like a learning process.
Yeah.
And I'm talking as someone who works for a company that also works with vendors overseas. The first time you work with them, there's a learning process.
Yep.
Okay. Now, guitar is a bit of a craft. Even with CNC machines and assembly line, it's a craft.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
lot of handwork that goes into the end of a guitar.
There just is. Okay. And there was a learning process. But they have gotten much, much, much better
Yeah.
in certainly the last 10 years, if not the last 20. That there are a lot of guitars right now made in Indonesia, Korea, that are just China, that are just really good, not just amazing instruments.
Yeah.
More than, you would have a hard time telling it apart from an onshore and a USA made version.
Yeah.
They're getting much, much better. Are they still cutting corners? Yeah, they purposely are cutting certain corners. There's some things you will
That's
not
how they
get.
make money.
Right. There's some things you won't get on a guitar made overseas. You're going to get thick finishes.
Yeah.
Thick urethane finishes. That's a thing. You might not get the best hardware. You might not get, or you might, and actually they are putting really good like name brand pickups in them these days.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I used to say you wouldn't get good nut work and fret work. That's changing. That is changing. I saw a video where Ron Thorne walked into a guitar shop
Yeah.
and picked out a made in Mexico Strat and complimented the nut work and fret work.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
saying.
And I think here's the big difference for me, because I think that the place where the overseas factories suffer is consistency. It's a lot
Okay.
easier to find a dog guitar made in Indonesia or China
Hmm.
than it is to find a dog guitar made in Mexico or the United States.
Hmm.
Can you? Yes. Can you find an awesome guitar made in Indonesia? 100% yes, you can.
Hmm.
But I think it's a lot easier if you take 10 guitars made in Indonesia, and the chances that 8 of them are rough is fairly high.
Yeah.
Where
Mhm.
you look at, I mean, I know I bust on Fender a little bit, but you take 10 guitars off the production line in California, and the chances that 8 of them are excellent are really high,
Yeah.
you know? And I've got you can see, I don't know if you noticed, but I got a new guitar hanging on the wall behind me.
Hmm.
Made in Indonesia. It's a no, sorry, not Eastman, Eastwood. It's called a side jack
Oh,
baritone
you got it.
DLX, yeah, dash M. And it sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty good. It's a baritone, so it doesn't sound like anything else I have. But the fretwork is a little rough,
Okay.
and the nut is terrible. It's
Oh,
the first thing it's getting is a new nut, because not only is the nut plastic, but it's just terrible. I
okay.
mean, it just really is just terrible.
Okay. So,
And
that's
there's a lot of finish flaws on it. There's some chips that are under the clear coat. There's a lot of issues. I'm not sending it back or nothing, because I got a really great deal on it. But if I had walked into a store and picked it up and played it, I would not have bought that guitar.
okay.
I would have bought a different one, because I wanted a baritone.
All right.
You know,
So, so, so the myth is that anything not made in America is a suck fest, and I think we agree that is not true.
no, I don't think that's true anymore. I
All right.
mean, at once upon a time,
Maybe.
the guitars that were being imported into the United States were probably mostly junk. But, I mean, Japan has always had a good reputation for making guitars.
Yep.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why Gibson sued all those
Yeah.
Japanese companies for making the copies,
Making
is
copies
because
that
they
were
were
good.
actually good.
Yeah. And
So
why Ibanez has a prestige shop there and you pay premium for that.
yeah. So going along with that, I think, is another myth that, and it does play into the financial side of things, because the myth is that vintage guitars sound better than modern guitars,
Sound
because sound better, are better, sound better, play better, are better,
just because they're vintage.
just because they're 50 or 60 years old.
Wow. How does that happen? Does the
Well,
guitar know it's that old and just makes itself sound better, or what's going on there?
and I think, again, that's like the thing with the Klon Centaur is, vintage guitars are really expensive now. They've become almost investment portfolio pieces rather than instruments, and people have to justify spending 25 or 50 grand on a guitar, and they do that by saying, well, this is so much better than any guitar that I've bought in the last 30 years.
Hmm.
But the funny thing about that is, and here's why I don't think this myth holds water, is because CBS era Fenders and Norland era Gibsons are widely considered to be some of the worst instruments ever made in the United States by those two companies.
I laugh at that.
Widely. And
I
that
have a
that that may actually be its own myth, right?
it
Because
actually is.
yeah, I have owned Norland era Fenders.
I owned a
No,
CB.
sorry, Norland era Gibsons, including a beautiful 1978 Les Paul Custom that had a 3-piece maple neck, was the most solid maple neck I think I've ever seen on any guitar, let alone a Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
It probably had a 12-piece body. It was painted black, so you couldn't tell, right? I dropped that guitar on its back on stage. I missed a guitar stand. Now you take a normal Les Paul, like say just a random 2005 Les
That's
Paul, and
instant.
drop
That's
instant
instant
death. Yeah. Nope. This guitar, it bounced because that 3-piece maple neck was so solid.
Wow.
It bounced. It didn't even go out of tune, Andrew.
But they were widely considered, those Norland era Gibson CBS era Fenders, as garbage. And
Oh yeah.
now what's going on with them?
Well, the
Now
prices are going way up.
yeah. So
Prices are going up.
right.
So which is it, right?
Yeah, right. Which is it? So
Are
here's
vintage guitars better, or are the vintage guitars that you bought that are pre-CBS, are they better just because they're pre-CBS?
no. I mean, I wish I owned a pre-CBS Fender. Here's the thing.
Why?
Why would I wish I owned a pre-CBS Fender?
The only reason I wish I owned a pre-CBS Fender is so I could sell it and make a boatload of
I
money
was going to
off
say
of it.
so I could retire.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it. I don't think they're better.
No, I mean they're
honestly,
cooler. It's cool to have that.
It is very cool, but you know what? Especially with the pre-CBS Fenders, you got to love the 7.25-inch fretboard radius, and I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have zero interest in a vintage Fender because to me, it's unplayable.
Right. You wouldn't have interested in it as a playing instrument.
No.
As an investment, if you had the money, it'd be great.
Would I hang it on the wall in a humidity controlled room and then wait for 20 years for it to go up in value 500%? Maybe.
Yeah. Funny story about those CBS era Fenders. I've played 2 in my life, never owned one. But I played 2. One of them weighed, and this is not an exaggeration, 700 pounds.
Dude, that 78 Les Paul Custom I had, legit, I put it on a scale, it weighed 12 pounds.
Yeah. I don't know.
An absolute backbreaker. That is one part of that era that is not a myth. When those guitars were heavy.
Yeah, when you pick up a Strat, you don't expect it
to
feel. I could not believe the weight of this guitar. This guitar had back. I could not believe how heavy this Strat was. It was just heavy. And I played another CBS era. It was the same year as that Strat, and it was light as a feather.
Yeah.
Same guitar. So it was just like
it comes down to wood is a crapshoot sometimes.
Right.
Right.
But you wouldn't see that today with a Stratocaster. Like they're all like roughly the same weight. You're not going to get some rando 12-pound Strat and they're like, you know what, let's just let it go. And like, no, they're not going to do that. Like, I don't even think you'd see that, but
yeah. Well, and the flip side is you're not going to find a 6-pound Strat coming off the production line either, because that wood blank is going to get nabbed by the custom shop.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're taking that one.
Yeah.
I think that myth is busted. And look, here's the deal. How do you feel about like that thing about people say, well, the wood ages, the magnets age, the this ages, the that ages? Like,
do things change as they age? Absolutely. Do things change as you use them, especially guitars? Do guitars break in? Absolutely. So you take a guitar that anybody has been playing for 60 years, and it's probably going to play and feel and sound pretty awesome, right? You take a guitar that somebody bought in 1956 and they stuck it in the case and put it under a bed, and they tore down the house last year, so they had to take everything out, and they discovered this pristine condition guitar sitting under the bed upstairs. The chances of it being an awesome guitar are 50-50.
Yeah.
Right. If it was an awesome guitar when it came off the production line, then it's going to still be an awesome guitar. If it was a dog when it rolled off the line, it's still going to be a dog. It doesn't matter that it's 65 years old.
I'll tell you what, if you found a guitar from that era that was pristine, just please, just who are you? And
Yeah.
can I have some of your millions? All right. Emotional myths. We're moving on to emotional myths. And I would classify an emotional myth as it's really not about the gear
Right.
anymore. Right now, it's just about our thought
It's about
processes, the
us.
things we tell ourselves. Yes, it's just about us as players and musicians. So I'm going to go with the first one
Okay,
because
hit me.
I believed this when I was younger. I did
Okay.
for like 4 seconds, and then I grew up. Um, Fast player equals great player.
Well, define great.
Aha!
Define better.
You found a running trend in this episode. Define great, right? Are Is every fast player great? No. Is every great player fast? No.
No.
Are some fast players great? Sure.
Yes.
Are some great players fast?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I don't think it's a 1-to-1,
No.
ratio there.
No.
I think you can be fast and be great, and I think you
Yeah.
can also be fast or great.
You can certainly, I mean, I don't think anybody would deny that BB King is one of the guitar greats in American blues history. Not a fast player.
Mm-mm.
Not a fast player.
Eric Clapton's not a fast player.
Not particularly, no.
Mm-mm. No. No.
You know,
There's a
but
lot
then
of great players that are not fast.
yeah, and there are a lot of look Steve Vai, he's a great player. He plays fast sometimes. I mean, as a
Sometimes.
matter of fact, he sometimes plays blindingly fast.
Mhm.
Good for him. He can do it.
Yeah.
I think what people confuse here and why this myth persists is they're confusing technique with greatness.
Mhm.
Somebody that studies the guitar at the level to which you need to study to be able to play like Steve Vai or Tim Henson or Tosin Abasi. That is a particular style of playing that requires a lot of technical expertise and a lot of patience and practice.
Mhm.
But you can be a great guitar player and not play like that. You can be Sonny Landreth or Ry Cooder or BB King,
Derek
that
Trucks.
Derek Trucks, right? She's a wizard with a slide, and sometimes he plays fast and sometimes he plays slow, and most of the time he plays in between. So faster is not better.
No.
Faster is just faster.
Yeah, and hey, look, I think the good news here is that if you want to learn to play fast, that's great.
You can do it.
Yeah. But if you think it will make you better, I would say better at what?
Better at what? Better at
Right.
playing fast.
Better at playing fast. It will, yeah, it's one tool in the toolbox.
Yeah.
Paul Gilbert, I want to just point out Paul Gilbert on the record had a reputation as being one of the fastest guitar players on this earth.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Dude is crazy.
Okay. And he still is. However, if you listen to Paul Gilbert play today, anything he's released in the last 10, 15, 20 years, speed is not on the menu. It's there. It's there to whet your appetite. But most of what he plays is all tone and a lot of boomer bends, by the way. A lot
Yeah.
of he's really become one of the most melodic guitar players of his age.
Yeah.
And he's a great singer, and like he's really evolved. It's fun just to watch it and listen because
Yeah.
as fast as he can be, he really doesn't lay the hammer down anymore. He's really all about tone and feel and
Yeah.
melody, and I love that about him. I love that he has it in the toolbox, but he doesn't whip it out every 5 seconds. It's kind of cool. All right.
Well, and that ties in, I think, with a couple of other myths
Mhm.
that involve, because I mentioned technique, technical skill, and that goes along with that only people who play fast, only these shreddy guitar players benefit from studying and really perfecting their technique and learning things like modes and, transitions and like really hardcore guitar music theory,
Mhm.
which then kind of translates into kind of a dearth of feel or a lack of
Mhm.
creativity when you're cramming, when you're playing 7/3, or, as I heard Steve Vai talking about something he did with Zappa that was 17/3. And just, I had to stop and pause it and think about what that might sound like.
Mm.
Um, you know, I think this myth that the only people who benefit from studying theory are shredders
Mm.
is something we gotta get rid of that.
Yeah. Um, so here's my take on that and why I agree with you that this is a myth. All right. So um I liken guitar playing to and music in general. I think I liken it to a form of communication.
Absolutely agree.
And to me, if you know three words and only speak in monotone, you will not communicate as effectively as
Mm,
someone with a larger vocabulary and who knows how to change the inflection in their voice.
sure.
Okay. So to me, learning theory and learning technique is giving you the ability to communicate on your instrument more effectively.
Yeah.
It's not the only way to be effective, but it increases your effectiveness. And further, I would say someone with a larger vocabulary and experience using it, someone who practices, will be able to, in situations where they need to think on their feet, improvise better.
Yeah, I would
Um,
agree with that.
I took a public speaking class some time ago and I learned about practicing your speech. And I thought, well, I thought public speaking was about being a good improviser. It's really not. It's about knowing your topic and getting your outline ahead of time and practicing what you're going to say. Are you going to say it
Preparation and
verbatim?
practice.
Yeah.
Who
Are you?
knew?
Yeah. So I it was eye-opening because I feel like music is very similar. If you don't practice and you don't learn any technique, can you be good? Yeah, I guess, depending
Yeah.
on how you define good and are you happy? Sure.
Yeah.
But if you want to communicate more effectively with your instrument and you want to be able to improvise, and to me, improvising is creativity. You're
Yeah.
creating, you're putting
It's
you're
pure creativity.
right. So I just feel like it's don't limit yourself. Don't, first of all, don't set rules for yourself that no one else is setting. Well, I don't want to learn theory because it'll kill my creativity. That is total,
No, it won't.
that is nuts.
Absolutely not.
No, in fact, I would argue it improves it.
Yeah. I might argue that as well if I had a little more time to think about it. You just dropped that on me. So, um, but I mean, another thing that ties into that is that if you don't know theory, you can't be a good songwriter. And I think that's just as
Ah,
much garbage as anything else that we've been talking about, because you can you can be an innate instinctive guitar player and still write good songs. You can,
yeah. I
you
mean,
know?
and again, define good, right? What's a
Yeah,
good song?
exactly. Yeah, define
You,
define good,
I
define better.
love, I'll go to Kurt Cobain. I didn't love Nirvana, but did he sell did Nirvana sell a lot of records?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, arguably those are good songs.
Yeah, and
And
I don't think anybody would argue that they're not, but
right, catchy.
did Kurt Cobain know a shit ton of music theory? No, he
No,
didn't. And it
no,
didn't stop him from writing songs that connected with people.
that's
To
right.
me, that's what a good song is. A song is good if it connects with you on some level. Does it
Hmm.
mean something to you? Does it make you want to listen to it again
Doesn't
so
evoke
that
an
you can,
emotion.
yeah, to continue to experience that connection?
Yeah.
To me, that's a good song.
Right. When someone asks me, how do you know a good song from a bad song?
I'll
Okay.
tell you when I hear it.
Yeah, because when I hear a good song, again, with the air quotes, it evokes a positive emotion in me.
Yeah.
It might, a memory, a good feeling. It might get me singing the melody. There's a lot of things that make a song good to me, but it evokes some sort of emotion. And you can do that without knowing theory.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. And does I am of the opinion that knowing a little bit of music theory, especially as it applies to the guitar, makes it easier for you to write songs.
Certainly more complex chord progressions.
Sure, but it does not prevent you, a lack of music theory knowledge does not prevent you from writing a good song.
Right? It may take you a little longer to find the notes you want, right? But
Yep.
you'll get there. I'm
Yeah.
with you. All right. That myth was busted quickly. And
Busted
with,
right open. So
yeah,
let's hit a couple of guitar player myths.
all right. Well,
Here's one for you. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
If you are already 50 years old or older, you are too old to start learning guitar. I see I've rendered you speechless.
I am speechless. Where is that written that once you're 50, you should not, cannot, would be forbidden to pick up a guitar? Is there a rule written?
Well, I'll tell you, man. I I had a student in the early 90s who was maybe 14 years old. Nice kid, loved guitar music, was a big AC/DC fan. And every week, his mother came and brought him in, and he sat down in my studio, and we had a guitar lesson for 30 minutes. And she sat outside, read her book. And every time he'd come out, she'd say something, "Oh, you sounded really good, honey," blah, blah, blah. And one time she said, "I sure wish I could do that too."
Oh,
Yeah. And I said, "You can. Do you want to come next week and take a lesson instead of Marty or whatever his name was?"
mhm.
And she said, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm too old."
I'm too old. Oh,
And she was maybe, I don't know, late 30s, maybe. And I said, I looked her right in the eyes and I said, "Nobody is too old to learn guitar. Like,
yeah,
have you missed your opportunity to put your 10,000 hours in and become, a player at that level? Maybe, but that doesn't mean you can't do it.
right.
I
But
think I think guitar is one of the easiest instruments to learn how to play a little bit,
right.
you know?
So I like this one. You touched a nerve,
I did.
and here's why.
Okay, tell me.
All right. I like this because, first of all, now is it is the best time to learn how to play an instrument. It's the best time
Yeah.
right now in where we are as a society. There is no shortage of free information on the internet. YouTube alone, there's probably 3 million guitar teachers
Yeah,
who,
no kidding.
and right, and there is no better time to have, with all this information you have, and beginner level equipment is getting better, the quality is
Mhm.
getting better, and you know it'll last you longer. Like you don't have to upgrade immediately if you buy a beginner.
Yeah.
The only thing I would tell a student who feels they're at an advanced age, if you're comparing yourself to children, you're going to have different challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. You may have to figure out a different approach to learning guitar than if you're 12 years old
Yeah,
or 20 years old.
you have a job, most likely responsibilities. You're not going to have the time that junior has to put into the instrument.
Yeah.
So know right off the bat, it's not about you and a lack of natural talent or ability. It's time.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Absolutely.
if you are of an advanced age and you're dealing with motor issues like
Arthritis.
arthritis, that's another thing you'll have to be aware of. But I would tell people, go into it. I would tell parents or adults, or the same thing I would tell children. No expectations.
Yeah.
Just go into it for the pure enjoyment. Expect to not be good right away. Expect it. And it's okay. It's okay that you won't be good. You know who was also not good at it first thing? Everyone. It's
Everyone.
be okay with it. Like, if just have no expectations. Don't, I need to be better by this date, or I need to be good by this date, or why don't I sound like him, or why is he getting faster than me, and why can't I play? No expectations, right? Just do it for the fun of it. If you
Yeah.
remove the expectation from it, and you're just there for the journey, who says you're too late? Just do it.
That's right.
Have
Yeah.
fun with it, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. Just have fun,
Yeah.
and there's no shortage of people. We did an episode about the community being a little toxic. However, it's not all bad.
Nope.
A lot of people out there willing to help, willing to, guys willing to send you his swamp ash special to try. There's plenty of dudes out there that will, or women, or non-binary, or whatever,
To
to help
me,
you.
dude is all encompassing. Everybody is dude.
Everyone's dude. All right, I
Yeah.
like that. That's good.
I
So
use it in the true California sense, the,
yeah,
the surfer sense.
Gotcha. No such thing as too old. Myth is busted.
Nope.
Get over yourself. Just go do it and have fun. We love you.
Yes, absolutely. And I had my share of adult beginners, and yeah, the funny thing is they were just as excited and frustrated as every other person I had who was learning how to play guitar.
Mhm.
They just expressed it in slightly different ways.
Yeah. And you have a benefit. You're an adult. You know what the benefit is? You have more patience. You have more stick-to-itiveness,
Yeah.
right? You have more maturity. So Junior has more time and maybe has the muscles and fingers of a 14-year-old, but you have things he doesn't. You have qualities that can help you in your journey in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're fine.
All right, here's our last one. Are you ready? This is our last one.
Bring it.
There is a myth out there that the lead guitarist is the most important person in the band.
That's a fact.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on.
All right. So, okay. So we're doing, it's Wes's turn he's laughing his nuts off, but he mutes his microphone. So if you're listening to this podcast, I am very funny. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm a very funny person. But Wes has experience doing podcasts. This is not the only podcast he does. So Wes knows how to mute his microphone when he's making noises like drinking, farting, laughing. What you see if you're watching us is Wes is laughing. If you're just listening, it sounds like I'm making jokes into a void. It's very disturbing and unsettling. All right, I'm pointing out, stop muting when you laugh. Only farts and drinks.
Okay.
When you fart, okay. It's Wes's turn this week for music that matters. Now,
It's time for dessert, folks.
Yeah, he pulled this one out. He pulled the rabbit out of the hat on this one, and I'm a big fan of this, so I'm gonna let him run. Wes,
okay.
Who is your pick this week? What album is your pick this week?
Okay, but I gotta run this with a caveat, because while I'm saying this album is music that absolutely matters, I'm not actually saying go buy this album. And I'll tell you why. Okay, so hold on.
We don't buy albums anymore.
I laugh in vinyl. The album that I picked for this Music That Matters segment is the very first album by a little band out of the Pacific Northwest called The Ventures. It came out in 1960, before everybody listening to this podcast was born, and it is called Walk, Don't Run. You don't say the comma. I just said the comma. It's called Walk, Don't Run. And it's named after one of the songs on the album. And so, we talked about my single at the top of the hour, or the top of the show. and it is I called it an instrumental surf rock number, and that genre gets its start with this album, with Walk Don't Run.
Mm.
Now, it's not what we would consider a surf album, because these are our kids, really, from Tacoma, Washington, where I don't know how much you know about surfer culture. I know a little bit, but I know Tacoma, Washington is not a hotbed of surf action.
No.
Right? But what it is it's a 27-minute long, 12-song album of instrumental rock and roll, early rock and roll, to be sure.
Mm-hmm.
The band themselves, the two guys that started the band, only wrote 3 of the songs on this album. All other 9 were cover tunes.
Covers, right?
And that stuck throughout their career. The vast majority of songs they recorded are not songs that they wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And this first album sounds a little bit more like, I think, to me, it sounds like what country music of the era sounded like, with a little bit of rockabilly thrown in. And of course, no singer, because it's all instrumental.
Mm-hmm.
But that very first album not only charted, but it went gold. They sold over 500,000 copies of that album.
First album.
Now, when we think of surf music, we tend to associate it with guitar players like Dick Dale and bands like the Beach Boys, neither of whom put out an album until 1962.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and like I said, the Ventures weren't even from Southern California, where surf music kind of got crazy. The thing that does it, though, is this album starts a legacy that absolutely cannot be underestimated as having a very powerful effect on the course of early American rock and roll. I mean, so between 1960 and 1970, the Ventures put out 32 albums.
32 albums in 10 years.
They put out 32 albums in 10 years.
That's prolific.
Yeah. 28 of those albums charted on the Billboard Top 100.
People loved them.
Yeah. And 3 of their albums sold gold, over 500,000 copies. They put a Christmas album out finally in 1968. It went straight to the top 10. It took a week to get to the top 10.
People could not get enough of the Ventures.
People could not get enough of the Ventures. These are also the guys, they showed up playing Jazz Masters, right? And that turned into the quintessential surf rock guitar. Mm-hmm. Now they switched to Mosrites, which, if you've never seen a Mosrite, it looks a little bit like this Eastwood side jack that I've got on the wall behind me. And so very early in their career, they were known Fender guitars, Fender amps, and that became the mainstay of surf rock. And I'll tell you, I got something to show you.
Whoa. All right. This is a family show. What Ventures is that?
Album. That's an LP, Ventures album. Ventures album. This one's called Wild Things.
Like mostly covers. On that.
Mostly covers. And the first song on it is Wild Thing. Da-na, da-na. You make summer in the city. All right. This is the first Ventures album I ever had. And this is really what you want to do if you want to check out the Ventures, is get one of their numerous greatest hits album. And this is what I realize nowadays, this is a little sexist. If you're listening to this instead of watching it, the cover is a beautiful young blonde woman wearing a golden bikini in a lounging position. And there's another photo similarly clothed on the gatefold. But this album has songs on it, including Walk Don't Run. It has Apache, which is a cover, Telstar, which is theirs. Pipeline, which is a cover, Wipeout, a cover, Tequila, cover, right? This is an album that's mostly covers. And these are the albums that you really want to get. You want to get their greatest hits or their compilation albums.
I like greatest hits. They're other people's hits.
They are absolutely other people's hits. They're other people's hits. But here's my favorite. This is my prized possession of my Ventures collection.
We're no longer on Walk, Don't Run.
No, I've taken Walk,
on...
Don't Run off the screen. This is their album called Hawaii Five-0. It came out in 1969. And the centerpiece of the album is, of course, the song that was the theme song of the cop show, Hawaii Five-0.
Wow.
Great song. A lot of people don't even know that was a song first and then the Ventures did it, because the two guys that wrote the song channeled the Ventures. And this is an original pressing that I got in a used record store for $1. This is a gold album I'm holding in my hand that cost me literally $1. And it's not scratched up or nothing. And there's even covers all over this song, including a song from a movie, a huge pop radio hit that was a double A, Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In, plus of course Hawaii Five-0. I listen to that album constantly.
So Wes, if I get you right, you're saying the Ventures are an influential band?
I'm saying the Ventures are an influential band, a hugely influential band that you might not ever have heard of.
It's possible.
You know, probably the biggest surf music song in modern American consciousness is Miserlou, which is a Dick Dale song, and it was kind of brought back to prominence by the movie Pulp Fiction. It was that was a single version. The original version that he recorded of that was on his debut album, and it was called Miserlou Twist. It was buried deep in the album and it sounded completely different. It had lots of horns and strings on it. The version that we're familiar with has a trumpet on it. But the Ventures continued to put albums out even when they weren't hugely popular. They have sold in their career over 110 million records worldwide. Okay. That's more than Pink. That's more than Britney Spears, Guns N' Roses, Prince, or Journey. They've sold more albums than Bon Jovi, Fleetwood Mac, Aerosmith, and Metallica. Now, Metallica's getting close. They have 105 million certified sales. And they did it through perseverance and quantity, frankly, not quality, because especially early on, most of the songs on the albums are filler.
Gotcha.
Right. But they inspired so many people to start playing guitar, including somebody we've mentioned multiple times in this episode, one Edward Van Halen, who says that the Ventures version of Pipeline is one of the very first songs he ever learned how to play on guitar. And that's a cover of another band called the Shantays, which was a surf band. Right. So and to continue my little ramble rant here that's gone on, the Ventures single-handedly changed the course of popular music in Japan. Fairly early. Yeah, Japan, big in Japan. Fairly early in their career, they went and toured Japan, and the Japanese people loved the Ventures so much that a rash of Ventures cover bands popped up.
Whoa.
And then those bands started to cover more traditional Japanese music and other pop songs. And it turned into a whole new style of surf music that developed independently of American surf music. Right. We often refer to Japanese surf music as eleki, Eleki, and it has a lot more tremolo picking in it, like very fast picking. And it's a distinctive style. And there are still some of the most active surf bands in the world these days are Japanese.
Wow.
And the Ventures, like seriously though, unless you're an absolute super fan like I am, don't bother with their straight studio albums. Go straight to the greatest hits compilations. So the
Okay.
first one came out in 1967. Especially if you can find one of their live albums, preferably from one of their Japanese tours, get those, because they are playing at the absolute top of their game and the crowds love them.
Nice.
Yeah. And they still put out albums. They obviously their output has gone down. As a matter of fact, they're putting out a new album this year, 2023. The Ventures are putting out a new album. None of the guys in the band are original. All of the original guys in the band are dead. All of
Wow.
them.
Way to bring down the room.
Yeah, I'm sorry. As a matter of fact, some of the other guys who played in the band in the early days have also passed away. But the new people that have taken over, you know, there's this like legacy thing where as one person retires, a new person comes in and that person just becomes part of the Ventures.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the beautiful things about their music is because there's no distinctive singer, they can just roll over and all they got to do is find somebody that can evoke the feel
Right.
and play the melodies. And that's what they're doing and they're continuing to do. And I'm super excited later this month. I'm actually going to see the new version, the current version of the Ventures play.
Okay.
And I can't remember the last time I was this excited about going to see a concert,
Oh, nice, man.
you know?
Well,
And
thanks for
it really
sharing
is.
that.
Yeah, it's just an amazing body of work. And it's one that I think everybody who's a guitar player should get into a little bit because their sense of melody is just astounding. Even when they're just straight playing the melody, you can feel the movement of the song. And plus, it's just really cool to hear like an instrumental version of Wild Thing or like Aquarius Let the Sunshine In. These songs that are hugely iconic pop songs, and these guys are doing them, with that surf mentality, that surf feel. There's in the middle period, they experimented with fuzz, and it's just a lot, man.
I love to hear your passion. I mean, but what I take away from this is that this is a band that influenced, they basically launched a genre
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
more than one country, and influenced a multitude of guitar players, millions. They inspired millions to pick up the instrument in the first place, including Eddie Van Halen, who inspired millions on his own.
Yeah,
And for that reason alone, I think it's worth checking them out and just being listening to a little bit of music history is like I do that. That never hurt anyone. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that was fun. I enjoyed Bustin' Myths with you this week. I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought
Oh,
that
dude, I loved it.
was great.
Just like
And
every other episode we've done, this one's my favorite so far.
yeah, very, very cathartic. It was good to like get some of that off my chest. Like it just want to put some truth out in the universe.
Yeah.
So speaking of putting truth out in the universe, I don't know if people remember this, but we have a website, differentstringspodcast.com. Go engage with us. Our socials there, emails, all that stuff. We will be fleshing out that website more and more and more. Wes, do you want to tell people about that wicked surf rock song that they heard in the beginning and they're going to hear at the end?
Yeah, that's a song that I wrote and recorded called Flight Line. And if you dig into the genre deep enough, listen to a song called Pipeline. My song is an homage to Pipeline, to that early age of surf music. And it was a ton of fun to write and record. And the band's called Hypersonic Secret. We're on Bandcamp, which is a great website for finding independent music. And I'll have an EP out in December of 2023, and that'll have in true Ventures tradition, it will have a cover tune on it.
Just one?
Well, it's expensive. You have to, when you record a cover tune, if you want it to be played on any of the streaming services, if you want to put out physical copies, you have to buy a license.
Yeah.
And that those things cost money. And you never know how much it's going to cost you, because it's kind of done on a per unit basis. You pay up front for physical copies like a CD or an LP, but you kind of have to pay as you go with the streaming and digital, and that can get expensive. I mean, I'm hoping it gets expensive, because that means I'm selling massive amounts of quantity. But yeah, it's I found a song that honestly, it should have been a surf song from the very beginning, and so I took it upon myself to make it a surf song. I'm not gonna tell anybody.
No, I want it to be a surprise. I love it.
It'll be a surprise.
All right. And that's awesome.
Yeah. And our next episode, come back for the next episode. Andrew and I are going to get into talking about it's a pure music topic that happens to involve a lot of guitar players, and that is super groups. That's our next topic.
Super groups. So super groups being a bunch of well-known musicians getting together and making a band out of it, and that's a super group.
That's a super group.
All right, we're gonna be getting deep. We're taking a deep dive into super deep into super groups. All right, man, great episode. And for those listening, thank you. For those watching, thank you. And yeah, see you next time.
Yeah, take it easy, everybody.
Be well.